Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for this talk about Bravo and nanoplastics, how the microbiome can defend us. Before we start, please allow me to introduce myself. I was born in Firenze, Italy in 1956. I'm 68 years old now. I obtained my MD in Florence in 1980. I also have a PhD in molecular biology and later a specialization in diagnostic radiology. When I was young, in the mid-80s, I worked as a postdoc at Burroughs Wellcome in North Carolina, and later as a visiting scientist at the National Cancer Institute of the US of the NIH since 1987. Later, I came back to Italy, Florence, and I was appointed professor of molecular biology at the University of Florence, or Firenze, if you prefer, in 1992, where I worked until 2014. I am the founder of Silver Spring, a Swiss company specialized in research and development of innovative approaches and products, such as those that will be described today. Over the course of my scientific career, I published more than 240 scientific articles, co-authored, among others, by scientists such as Eduardo Lapetina, Stu Aronson, Jackie Pierce, Peter Duesberg, Henry Bauer, the late Dr. Jeff Bradstreet, Dietrich Klinghardt. One of my articles was sponsored by Nobel laureate Sir John Vane. My current research interests are in immunotherapy, oncology, and neurosciences. I emigrated to the United States about 8 years ago, well, more than that, 9 years ago now, but I'm still in contact with Italy, and I enjoy reading the news in Italian. Now, this comes from the official broadcasting company of Italy. It's called RAI. And the other day I found this article that was quite interesting, talking about nanoplastics. So I thought to myself, look, the Italians now are aware of this incredible problem that is pollution by micro and nanoplastics. So I went on, I read the article, I found the corresponding articles in English. What do they say? This article reports some recent discoveries by researchers from Columbia University in United States, describing significant quantities of nanoplastics found in bottled water under the microscope. And it is quite frightening that nanoplastics can travel into the bloodstream, cells, and brain with potential unknown effects on human health and the ecosystem. And these researchers found that bottled water contains hundreds of thousands of nanoplastics, fragments of the order of a millionth of a meter. They come from bottles and caps, and paradoxically, from the filters that are used to purify the water. They are so small that they had to invent a new microscopic technique to see them. This article was published in a very prestigious scientific journal called PNS, Proceedings of the National Academy of Science of the United States. And they describe a submerged world of invisible fragments that, the researchers warn, can pass into the blood, cells, and brain and move to any part of the planet with potential unknown effects, detrimental effects, I would say, on human health and the ecosystem. This is the original article that you can download for free from the PNS. And I keep on quoting the article that I read, describing how the researchers have found that an average liter of water, about 1 liter is 1/4 of a gallon, 1/4, contain about 240,000 particle plastic. Can you imagine 240,000 numbers that are 10 to 100 times larger than previously estimated? Microplastics measure from 5 millimeters to 1 micrometer. 1 micrometer is 1/1000th of a millimeter. A million of a meter, human hair, for comparison, is about 70 micrometers wide, while nanoplastics are even smaller than 1 micrometer. So small that, unlike microplastics, they can pass directly into the bloodstream and travel from there to organs, including the heart and brain. They can invade individual cells and cross the placenta to reach the fetus. In detail, they identified from 110,000 to 370,000 particles per liter. Can you imagine? Hundreds of thousands of particles per liter. And 90% of those were these very, very small nanoplastics. The rest were microplastics. And curiously, one of the types of these plastics probably comes from the plastic filters that are used to purify the water before it is bottled. This is how they did. So these are the plastic bottles containing water that we know very well because probably we use them every day. And they went through a very complex process. They had to develop a new microscopic technique, and eventually they identified these nanoplastics in these hundreds of thousands of particles per liter. And they checked the different brands, brand A, brand B, brand C. I wasn't able to find the exact brands that they checked. So if you download the article and if you read it and you find whether they refer to one particular brand or another, please let me know it because I wasn't able to find. In any case, unfortunately, there is no difference. Brand A, B, and C, they have more or less the same incredible high amount of nanoplastics. And the researchers, of course, they comment that plastic pollution has been a rising global concern with increasing plastic consumption every year. And I think we are all familiar with this. Microplastic contamination have been identified to prevalently from almost everywhere in the environments and even human biological samples. And mounting discoveries suggest the fragmentation of plastic polymers doesn't stop at the micron level, but rather continues to form nanoplastics with expected quantities orders of magnitude higher. So essentially, plastic is degraded, but it is degraded, and now it has been discovered down to these very, very tiny particles called the nanoplastics that are so incredibly small that they had to develop a new microscopic technique to see them. And there are hundreds of thousands of these particles per liter or per quart of the water that we drink. And of course, this has an environmental impact because the nanoplastics are easily ingested by small organisms like plankton, zooplankton, or fish. They enter the food chain and potentially accumulate in larger animals. And this disrupts their feeding, growth, and reproduction. And they persist and spread because they are lightweight and they easily travel through air and water, reaching remote areas and accumulating in sediments. This makes their effects widespread and long-lasting. And they impact the quality of soil because they negatively affect the soil fertility and hinder plant growth by altering soil structure, inhibiting the uptake of nutrients and water. So it is said that today's apples or today's tomatoes, they don't have the same nutrients as they had 50 or 100 years ago. Well, one of the reasons could be this, the impact on soil quality by the nanoplastics. And of course, the nanoplastics, they have an impact on human health because they enter our bodies through inhalation, ingestion, or skin contact, accumulate in organs, and trigger inflammatory responses, potentially leading to cell damage and organ dysfunction. They interact and disrupt various biological processes within our bodies, such as the hormone function, nutrient absorption, the immune system. And they may contribute to cancer development due to their small size and their ability to interact with our DNA. And they also have an impact on the brain because they enter through the air. They can be inhaled. They reach the brain through the olfactory nerve or bypass the blood-brain barrier. Or they enter into the brain by consumption of contaminated food or water that leads to the entering of the nanoplastics into the bloodstream and from there reaching the brain. And of course, there can be also direct exposure in occupational settings or accidents, and they can enter the brain through injuries or medical procedures. And what is the impact on the brain once they have entered into the brain? Nanoplastic trigger inflammatory responses leading to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease. They cause oxidative stress because they generate reactive oxygen species that damage the brain cells and contribute to neuronal death. They impair neurotransmission because they interfere with communication between neurons. They impact memory, learning, and behavior. And they disrupt brain development. During the development of the brain, the nanoplastics, they hinder the maturation of the brain and the cognitive function. Unfortunately, no one is safe, not even the fetus. You may think, well, the fetus inside the womb at least is safe. No, it is not, because the placenta, that is the organ that connects the fetus to the mother, and through which blood, nutrients, oxygen goes through, well, the placenta is filled with micro and nanoplastics, up to the point that researchers, they coined a new word, a terrifying new word, plasticenta, plastic placenta. This article was published by Italian colleagues in 2021, evidence of microplastics in human placenta. Can you imagine plasticenta? I mean, that's terrifying to think that even before we are born, we are contaminated, heavily contaminated with micro and nanoplastics. And there is no safe house, nowhere on Earth. You may think, okay, let's go to the North Pole. Not good, because even in the North Pole, there is a plastic pollution. This was published 2 years ago, and you can go anywhere on Earth, and there is no safe place. How can we defend ourselves? This is a beautiful picture of Copenhagen in Denmark. And when I was there, my daughter was studying at the university in Denmark. So we went to see her, and we took a trip through the canals in Copenhagen. And we were told by the guide some story, I don't know whether it is true or not, but you know, it might have some grain of truth, that in olden times, since the water was contaminated, not by microplastics, by bacteria and all types of parasites, the king ordered that all the men of his army should drink only beer. And actually he allowed 10 liters of beer per soldier. Can you imagine that? And the king himself said that he could not give audience past 10 a.m. in the morning, because by then he had drunk too much beer. Well, I don't know, again, whether this is one of the legends that tour guides tell tourists or not. The point is that in ancient times, Vikings, for example, they used to drink beer because water was not good. So should we forget about our bottled water and drink only beer, or maybe drink only tea? No, unfortunately, this is not a good idea either, because beer or tea, they're made with water, and a microscopic survey on microplastic in beverages demonstrated that in beer, mineral water, tea, everywhere, there is contamination by plastics. But there is something even worse. This comes from the article I just showed you. Here, the authors show that daily drinks produced worldwide. So again, there is no place to go, including beer, mineral water, tea. They're all polluted with microplastics without exception. There is something worse, because toxicants like heavy metals or antibiotics, they bind to the microplastics. So you not only have the pollution due to the plastic themselves, but also to the heavy metals, antibiotics, all other types of toxins that bind to the plastic, and they are carried all over our body, thanks, if you can say so, to this pervasive pollution of microplastics. And if you want, you can take a look at all the articles that have been published. You can retrieve them from PubMed. So we're talking about very serious, very reputable scientific articles published in peer-reviewed journals that you can retrieve from PubMed. So these are not, they do not come from some blog, they come from serious, rock-solid science. So is there a solution? Can I propose a solution? Who am I to propose a solution? Well, I've been working with plastics for the past 30-some years. This article was published in the most reputable scientific journal dealing with kidney disease. It is called Kidney International. And this was published in 1994. And you can see my name together with my colleagues who were working with me at the University of Florence or Firenze in those days. Why were we interested in the biocompatibility, as it is called, or the effects of plastics on human cells? Because we were interested in dialysis patients. You know, when you undergo dialysis because you have a serious kidney problem, all your blood goes through a dialyzer. Dialyzer that purifies the blood from all toxins, metabolites, everything that has been accumulated, and that unfortunately the kidney is unable to detoxify, to eliminate, because it is not working. So the dialyzer is made of plastic membranes. So this is a representation. Here you have the blood, and these are all the toxins that pass through the membrane, whereas all the red blood cells, white blood cells, they stay, of course, inside the blood. So this thing here that is represented like a yellow thick wall is a plastic membrane. And we were very much interested in knowing what were the effects of these plastic membranes on the human cells, in particular the cells of the blood, the cells of the immune system. So it's about 30 years that I am working on the effects of different types of plastics, because we checked all different types of dialysis membranes on cells of the human body, with particular reference to cells of the immune system. Now, the solution in this case comes from the microbiome, all the microbes that we have in our bodies. You may know by now that we are only 10% human. This is a beautiful book that was written some time ago, that if we count the number of human cells in our bodies, and then we count the number of microbial cells, the so-called microflora in the gut, or the microbial cells we have in our skin, in our airways, everywhere, then we end up with a number that is 10 times higher than that of human cells. So if we count the cells, we have 10 times more microbial cells than human cells. This is where the title comes from, 10% human. But even more interesting is if we count the number of microbial genes. This was published by the Harvard Medical School in 2019, and it starts with a rhetorical question: how many stars are there in the observable universe? Once it was thought that this was an impossible question, but now we have an answer: about 1 billion trillion of them. What do the stars have to do with microbial genes in the human microbiome? Well, how many genes in the collective human microbiome? Around 232 millions, but another estimate yielded a number comparable not to the number of stars, but to the number of atoms in the universe. This number is known as the Eddington number, and it is the number of protons in the observable universe. Originally, it was thought was 10 to the 79th, that is a 10 followed by 79 zeros, and current estimates make it approximately 10 to the 80, so it's a 10 followed by 80 zeros. So it's an incredibly high number of microbial genes in the collective human microbiome. Here I have to clarify one point. I'm sure that you are familiar with probiotics. You go to your local grocery store or to your vitamin shop, and you'll find tens, if not hundreds, of different products that are called, rightly so, probiotics. And what I'm talking about, the product Bravo that I am describing today, is not merely a probiotic. It is an entire microbiome. So what's the difference? Well, this comes from Wikipedia. You can take a look. It's very well done. When you talk about probiotics, actually, you only talk about these: the bacteria, the lactobacillus, the thermophilus, the bifidobacterium, and so on. But when you talk about a microbiome, you describe an entire ecosystem where there are the microbes, of course, but there is also their theater of activity. What does it mean? All the molecules that these microbes produce for themselves and also for us. There are peptides, proteins, lipids, polysaccharides, DNA, mobile genetic elements called plasmids, phages. Phages are friendly viruses that help killing all bad bugs, all pathogenic bacteria, and help our immune system. And also, the microbes, they produce signaling molecules. They remove toxins. Signaling molecules like molecules that stimulate the immune system, like GCMAF, macrophage activating factor. I will talk about this later. So Our Bravo is an entire microbiome, not simply a couple of strains of microbes. And this is the Bravo I'm talking about. I invented and developed this product that is currently manufactured in Switzerland. It comes in different shapes and forms. It can be made with bovine milk and colostrum, but it also has a non-dairy version of it made with hemp seed proteins. And if you go to the website, you can read all the science, look at videos of mine, and also read about, the different composition, the different features of each one of these products. Here, I like to mention a very old blog, more than 10 years old, written by the late Dr. Jeff Bressett, a very good friend of mine. And as soon as he knew about Bravo probiotic, he was a very well-known, very well-respected expert in the field of autism. He immediately grasped that it was not merely a probiotic, but was a system for making a new ecosystem, the human healthy microbiome. Fortunately, this blog is still online, and if you wish to take a look at it, of course, consider that this is more than 10 years old, so things have evolved, and now we have different products. But I like to mention my very good friend, the late Dr. Bressett, who was one of the first to realize the complexity and the beauty of this entire microbiome. So let's go back to nanoplastics and microplastics. How Bravo can defend us? Well, first of all, the microbes of Bravo degrade plastics. Actually, they like it. They use it as their food. And this is not something new, because the concept of bioremediation has been known for quite some years. And if you wonder how many microbes have we in Bravo, well, let me tell you that we have more than 400 different strains. I remind you, when you go to your local grocery shop or local vitamin shop, you find probiotics that have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different strains. Maybe they have billions of members of those strains, but only a very limited biodiversity. So no more than 2, 3, 4, 5, at most 7 different strains. And this is a very, very limited biodiversity and very far from the complexity of our human microbiome. In our Bravo products, we have hundreds of different strains, and they've all been published in reputable scientific journals that undergo peer review. One was published in the Madrid Journal of Immunology, another one was published in the Journal of Neurology and Stroke. And we list all the different strains, so very long tables with hundreds of different strange names that include, of course, microbes, but also plasmids that are small pieces of circular DNA that serve the purpose of exchanging information between the microbes, and also phages, these beneficial bacterial viruses that help eliminating the bad bugs, help eliminating the pathogenic microbes, as well help our immune system, stimulating and regulating, modulating our immune system. So all these articles can be freely downloaded. You can take a look and you can enjoy reading all the different strains. As I said, it has been known, this comes from The Guardian, we are just getting started, the plastic-eating bacteria that could change the world. Well, we already have them, and they are already changing at least our inner world, because it had been known that microbes, bacteria, can eat plastic. And this is called biodegradation. This is a scientific article describing how the enzymes that are secreted by the microbes, they attach to the surface of plastic, they cut it, and ultimately they are assimilated, the plastic, by microbial cells as carbon source. So it is their food. The microbes that we have in Bravo, they eat plastic. It is a good food for them, and they eliminate, degrade the plastic for us. This is another scientific cartoon explaining how the plastic in a bottle of mineral water is degraded through these microbial enzymes, so that at the end, the microbes, they eat the plastic, they eliminate the plastic for us. There is also another mechanism, because the microbes of Bravo, unique, I mean, you don't find this in other probiotics, bind and eliminate plastic by removing the plastic and also other toxicants. Again, this is not something entirely new. It had been known for about 10 years. The toxins and heavy metals, they bind to probiotics, and we have the best probiotics in the world. This comes from that article I just mentioned before, where you can see, for example, the Lactobacillus casei or the Lactobacillus bulgaricus or the Streptococcus thermophilus, all strains that we have in the hundreds in our products. They bind, for example, arsenic, copper, chromium, and so on, and eliminate. It means that all these toxicants and the plastics, they bind to the bacteria, and then they're eliminated with the stools. And then what happens? Do we pollute the environment? No, because the bacteria will keep on eating them. So at the end, there will be no plastic left. And when I was talking about the theater of activity, I was saying that the microbes of Bravo, they produce a number of molecules. Among these, I wish to highlight the role and function of one of them, an immunogenic factor that is called the GCMAF, macrophage activating factor. Why? Because not only activates macrophages, but also binds the nanoplastic and also other toxicants. If you want to know more about the GCMAF, you can go and take a look at What Doctors Don't Tell You. It's an old article still available online describing the efficacy of this very powerful, very versatile immune stimulating, immune modulating agent, sort of a superhero. Here in this article published in 2020 together with Drs. Carter and Pacini, we demonstrated that in Bravo, we have 100 times more GCMF activity against an enzyme that is called nagalase than the chemical GCMF that was used as a reference. So in our Bravo, you have a lot of naturally produced GCMF that is produced by the microbes. And about 11 years ago, in 2013, we demonstrated how GCMF actually binds, is a powerful binding molecule. And this was based on some previous studies demonstrating how GCMF, that is also called vitamin D binding protein, is a scavenger for actin and other types of metabolites, and also for plastics or toxicants. A scavenger means it's a protein that binds and eliminates toxicants or molecules that can be harmful. And also GCMF, by activating macrophages, supports the immune system, a system that is damaged by the plastics and other toxicants, and also helps the macrophages to eat the plastic and eliminate them. This is another article that was published more recently in 2023 in the journal called Science of the Total Environment, demonstrating how the macrophages are able to eliminate the polystyrene microplastics. And today we also know there are nanoplastics, and GCMF that is in Bravo helps stimulating and modulating the macrophages. After all these words, the most important question is, but does it work? Are Bravo products actually able to eliminate all these things? Well, the answer is yes. And the answer is yes, not because I say so, but because it has been published together with an independent researcher, Dr. Jerry Blighty, in two scientific articles, one published in the Madrid Journal of Immunology, the other in the prestigious American Journal of Immunology, where we describe how consumption of Bravo products, that of course in scientific articles you cannot do advertisement, you cannot do commercials, so it is called extremely diverse probiotic yogurt, is associated with elimination of a number of toxicants, plus of course a normalization of the endocrine function, the gut microbiota, detoxification. So all this has been proven. This is a rock solid scientific evidence. And this is a long list. I will not even try to pronounce all these toxicants that we have seen being eliminated by using Bravo. I will just read the first four because they're easy to be read: cadmium, lead, barium, heavy metals, glyphosate. Do I need to tell you glyphosate, what does it do? It has been involved in multi-billion legal causes for cancer, autism, and a number of other diseases. So pollution by glyphosate is associated with all types of human, not only human, but human, animal, and environmental problems. Well, Bravo eliminates it from our bodies, and this again has been scientifically proven. Plus all these other things, perchlorate, diethyl phosphate, and all these difficult to pronounce names that are all toxicants or toxins, if you prefer, that are associated with plastics, with pollution of all types. So we have demonstrated that Bravo eliminates all these things. And what about the environment? We cannot forget the environment because nanoplastic, microplastics do not affect only us. They affect the entire environment from the farmland to livestock, mangrove, sea animals, microorganisms, and so on. So what can we do for the environment? Do we care only about ourselves and Bravo helps only ourselves? Actually not. As I said in the beginning, Bravo is made in Switzerland. And Switzerland is known to be very, very conscientious about the environment, about ecology. And by the way, the Swiss Alps are very pristine, are very clean places. But as I say, there are no safe places on Earth. So I'm not saying that because we make Bravo in Switzerland, because of this, Bravo is safer, no? We aren't safer in Switzerland than in other places in the world. The point is that in Switzerland, the manufacturing company, our manufacturing company is certified by Demeter. I don't know if you are familiar with Demeter certification. It is the oldest certification body in the world. Well before anybody talked about organic or biological, there was this Demeter certification. Demeter stands for farmers who are striving for health and resilience on their farms. They nourish the soil, protect the environment, respect the well-being of their animals, produce a nutrient-dense food. Actually, in this year, 2024, we celebrate 10 years of biodynamic agriculture. Demeter is based on biodynamic agriculture because it all began in 1924. And 4 years later, in 1928, these studies pioneered by Rudolf Steiner, they led to the creation of the Demeter brand and the first Demeter standards. So we're talking about standards of purity, of quality that are not heard anywhere, were not heard anywhere before. And they are the highest possible standards for the respect of the environment as well as the health of the humans and the animals, the entire environment. I like, we are very close to the conclusion, to share with you the vision of Demeter, of Biodynamic Federation. That is the vision that we share because, as I said, Bravo is made in a Demeter certified manufacturing facility. And here there is agriculture. So they stress it's a culture. It's a culture that leads to the holistic development of the earth and involves a social relationship, economic value creation, human development, ecology, and also cosmic and spiritual impact of evolution of earth and mankind. I encourage you to take a look at this Demeter certification because it's very inspiring. And when you take a look at that, please remember that our Bravo fully belongs to these principles, to these values. The last slide, conclusions. Bravo is uniquely positioned to protect us from the danger posed by micro and nanoplastics. It is an entire microbiome that comprises microbes and their theater of activity. That's important. It's not merely a probiotic. It is endowed with a unique biodiversity, with hundreds of strains, phages, and plasmids that degrade and metabolize plastics. Microbes and molecules that bind and eliminate plastics and all types of toxicants, as we have demonstrated. And it is manufactured in Switzerland in a Demeter-certified facility with vision, mission, and principles in the 4 dimensions of holistic, sustainable development, including a 5th sphere of cosmic and spiritual impacts. This is my very first slide. I thank you so much for your time and attention. And if you want to have any further information, please feel free to contact me. Thank you again.